What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer doing that deck profile for pure Mysterune. Because when I first read the card archetype, in my mind, I thought it was just straight up a mill deck. People are using it in Magical Musketeers and Sky Strikers, obviously so, but I do like it just to see if you can mill your opponent out, because that's such a weird deck idea. It was kind of made, like, artificially through, what's that card called? The Jar card. It's a monster. Morphing Jar, Morphing Jar FTK, but that's not a real archetype. Like, this card wasn't designed to do that, and this deck I feel like it kind of is. And I'm not playing Morphing Jar in this deck, and why that is will become apparent pretty soon, because you are trying to mill your opponent out, obviously. But before I get started in the card by card, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been supporting me on my YouTube channel for so long. Really close to 1,000 subscribers, and the viewership has just been off the charts as of recent. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and talk about this deck profile. I do run 3 Pot of Extravagance, 3 Pot of Duality. Obviously, these cards can be used in tandem. I don't run any other Pot of cards or any other draw cards, for that matter, other than the Field Spell and, Reckless Greed. But the thing is that these can both be activated during your opponent's turn. Which is really, really important, because you can get all these draws here, and if you get these cards, they're just going to give you more pluses. And most of these cards can be activated from your hand, the Mysterune cards I'm talking about, so a lot of really good synergy there. One Called by the Grave. Ash Blossom is pretty much the only hand trap that hurts this deck really, really badly, but unfortunately, and this is the truly unfortunate part, everybody plays Ash at 3, or at least most people, so you got to play this in your deck. I run 3 Point of the Mysterune. This card is your searcher for the entire archetype, which is really nice. And you get to banish, mill a card, which can come up in the niche every once in a while. My favorite card is Mysterune of Destruction. This one targets a spell and trap your opponent controls, destroys it, which is just so good during your opponent's turn. But more importantly, or I guess equally as importantly, it mills 4 cards, which is the most in the Mysterune archetype, outside of one that lets your opponent freely draw a card, and then you banish like 4 cards. But I'm never letting my opponent go +1 like that. I mean, that's just, or I guess +2, considering you're losing a card. If you have the Field Spell, maybe not. But for the most part, just that, thinking of that card interaction alone is just not good. I don't want my opponent to draw a fresh card from their deck. So yeah, I run 3 of these. I do run 1 of the Mysterune of Dispel. It can be good as this extra searcher, because you can only activate 1 of these each per turn, so it kind of works out that way. It could also just be used for the fusion summon, but ultimately, yeah, that's kind of how it works. This one banishes, cards equal to how many they control, so on average 3 or 4, which is also, very good. It can special summon from the extra deck if you really need it to, but mostly you're going to be using it for that effect, meaning you're really punishing your opponent from, like, laying, if they do lay down cards to the Field Spell, your opponent's almost always going to get rid of 1 of them. And this Field Spell is so important. I do run Messenger of Peace. Now, I know this card is, like, normally really janky, and obviously not, like, a good floodgate for the most part, but when you start getting this lockdown, and now that skill drain's at 3, you pretty much, once you get the certain cards in place, the duel is just straight up over, like, completely over. And the combo does, not combo, but the pieces really do involve Messenger of Peace, and it can be good, specifically in this deck, because you can't play Mystic Mine, at least in my opinion. Because if you think about it, and I talked about this during the gameplay video, Messenger of Peace and Marsh Macaron and Skill Drain effectively do everything that Mystic Mine does, at least in theory. Maybe not as well, but I mean, that's just kind of how the deck has to play, because you do really need this card. Otherwise, you're just wasting free cards. Like, banishing 4 cards, let's say, like, that's what you're going to get out of this is great, but that doesn't actually do anything, to push the game state forward. Drawing the cards back is really good, but yeah, I personally like playing Messenger of Peace with Marsh Macaron and Skill Drain, because I don't know how your opponent's getting out of that unless they have Spell and Trap, removal, which, you kind of have the answer for, at least in theory. So yeah, 3 Trixar Reincarnation. This is a mill deck, and as I'm sure you can see here, there's also 3 Present card. Opening these 2 together obviously is really good. Opening like multiples of these, because this isn't a hard once per turn. Milling 15 cards from your opponent's deck is obviously very, very good. I run Reckless Greed. You have to draw. You have to draw into your deck. Because once you get Skill Drain, Marsh Macaron, and Messenger of Peace, like I said, the rest of it is just getting these cards to mill your opponent out. And this is like the quickest way humanly possible to do that. Also, if you draw into a Pot of Extravagance, obviously you get to draw 2 cards during your turn. You can draw cards during this. So the setback of Reckless Greed doesn't actually do anything against this deck, and I like to play it. I talked about Reincarnation. I talked about Present Card. 3 Skill Drain I mentioned a lot here. 3 Dark Bribe. This could be Solemn Judgment, although you do kind of want to be careful about your life points a little bit, especially as you're getting your like hard lock set up, and then making your opponent draw a card. Obviously, kind of contributes to the whole mill thing, so it works out pretty well. Because once you get your lock in place, the only thing that's going to hurt you 99.9% of the time is spell and trap removal. So, in the form of like spell cards and such. Because monster effects won't, they won't be a thing pretty soon. That's why I play Dark Bribe. And then I talked about Marsh Macaron because this kind of holds you over, and then once you get Messenger of Peace, you just win the duel until you mill your opponent out, which you have tons of ways to do that. Onto the extra deck, it's kind of straightforward, kind of simple, kind of dumb. 2 Elder Entity, because you're pretty much just playing a Dogmatica package with 3 of these each. So 3 of the Gary, what a weird name. 3 of the Wings of Mysterune. So, obviously you're playing 3 copies of these because you want to have, as many copies as you can for as long as you can until you really need them. So that means Makaba because you have 2 Cyber Dragon Nova here. Again, really stupid. Wind Pegasus also, and then 2 Tri-Brigade Ferjit. Otherwise, there literally will never ever be a use for your extra deck other than this. Onto the side, you get to play a lot of cool cards. The Winged Dragon of Ra, Lava Golem, 3 Gamma Seal, so more kaijus there. Basically, you can really mess with your opponent's board. Lightning Storm, of course, is pretty decent and evenly matched as well. I guess this could be Cosmic Cyclone too, but yeah, I like the flexibility of this being against attack monsters as well. Meaning that you can probably take out Messenger Peace, perhaps. I don't really know exactly where you'd side. It just kind of depends if your opponent's playing super monster heavy. Maybe you don't want to play these, or you could technically take out Marsh Macaron and have faith that you're gonna have your Messenger of Peace and Skill Drain, kind of aligned here. You also can summon from the extra deck to put some decent bodies. It says 2,000 attack on there. So I guess it's kind of up to you and how desperate you feel, because I feel like this deck list alone is going to take you pretty far, at least relatively speaking, for what the archetype is. But yeah, that's the deck profile. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Other than that, that's going to do it for today's video, and I'll see you guys next time.